were shown their health facilities, and one of the sections was a maternity ward. It had this woman who was in quite a bit of pain, and I assumed that she had just given birth and hence there's the recovery that was necessary. Then Dinky engaged her in a conversation. Turns out that she was just 16 years old. And it was not the first child. Later on, when we sent a social worker to interview her to find out her conditions, turns out it was her second child. And I said,
16?
At 16. So I said, when did she have the first child? At 14 or 15 at the latest. And the husband did not have a permanent job. So what is the position? Basically, we are not after population control per se. We are after educating all of our citizens. That, and that's why we call the version of the bill responsible parenthood. Your parents, you're supposed to take care of your children. You're supposed to think of them at the point in time when they are not capable of doing the same for themselves. You have responsibilities, and that is, I think, the obligation of the state, to remind all of these parents that each child that you do bring into this world, you have a certain set of responsibilities. Now, we will help them once after education. We will rest on their consciences, their beliefs, and enable them to act on their decisions as to how best to plan their respective families and exercise responsible parenthood. We do not subscribe to a policy of limiting children, for instance. We do not agree that we should force anybody to do any act, because that, I think, is contrary to the fundamental beliefs we have that democracy is an issue of choice. We have our own personal religious beliefs, but we have to separate the actions of the state and those of the church. That has gotten me into conflict with certain conservative members of our clergy. But at the end of the day, I said, the situation of that 16-year-old girl is not unique. And should I attempt to mimic an ostrich that buries the head in the sand, when I'll be asked by God at some point in time, what did you do to the least of my brethren? I have to be able to say, we stopped a condition where nobody seemed to care enough to educate them and empower them to effect their own decisions.
Thank you. Thank you. Clearly, there is a theme here. There is another set of questions that's around this. And there is a question on the government stand on gay marriage, on child trafficking, and where that comes out, and possibly even selection or the choice or abortion, and whether your government will take any position on these or not.
Can I tackle the second question
Yes.
first? Child trafficking. We are against all forms of human trafficking. And in a year's time, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact data, but I am sure the law against trafficking was enacted in, I think, 2003. And the record of their prosecutions and successful prosecutions, I think the figure was convictions, only one conviction in a period of 7.5 years. In our first year in office, I think we've had 34. Let me try to be precise. At the minimum, 20-something cases were filed by my predecessor, but we've increased that already in the first year. In fact, there has been recognition, even from the U.S. government, that removed us from the Tier 2 watch list to Tier 2. They've actually recognized also a prosecutor, a female prosecutor from Zamboanga, who has successfully prosecuted, I think, 6 cases already by now, by herself. So there is no question that we will further strengthen the coordination of so many different agencies tasked in various other facets. Gay marriage, I don't think I'm ready to tackle that that fight right now. But
you've only been in power for a short time, so.
but the perspective is, and I will really have to think quite a lot of it. If it's their choice, no. Normally, I would say, you're adults. You should be able to do whatever you want, so long as you don't harm anybody else. But if the next step happens to be, we want the right to adopt, then I would be in a dilemma as to whether or not a child that will grow up in this world with a lot of problems will also have to, from the get-go, address that particular issue also at a very young age. And I'm not sure, my priority would be looking after the child who has a very tender and impressionable mind. What was the third? I'm sorry.
Never mind. I don't think we need to go there. You answered it so well before. Actually, I know we're going to be coming to a close, but I wanted to, there's one question also about the Philippine diaspora. And clearly all your predecessors have had a number of different kinds of issues, especially around domestic workers in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and many of your predecessors have really, especially President Ramos took that case very strongly. Have you seen a change in the treatment of Filipino domestic workers in certain countries? And does this continue to be an issue for your government that you feel you have to tackle in a specific way?
It's a continuing concern. We have something like 10 million
Yes, exactly.
of our countrymen, about 10% of the population outside of our country, and subject to the laws of various countries that might have a very different perspective as to rights of individuals. Our ultimate goal, there's actually a law that says it should not be a state policy to export our labor. And our goal is that if somebody decides to work abroad, it is out of choice rather than necessity. Now, it still pushes us tremendously. For instance, in the current troubles in the Middle East, we have had to send our foreign affairs people several times to repatriate our countrymen and for them to say, you know, here we might risk getting shot, getting hit by artillery or bombs or what have you, but we are being paid 3 times our normal salary. Back home, we will not have a job. So if here there's a gamble, there's a certainty. So we are trying to really address that situation of providing the opportunities from so many facets. The conditional cash transfer program seeks to motivate them to keep their children in school, be empowered by the skills that education should bring about, and therefore have upward mobility. Other aspects are, again, a reformation of the educational structure. They're more focused. They're supposed to assist our students to guide them that you will learn for something that you have good prospects in. The BPO industry is a very significant contributor here. When I was in elementary school, everybody said, you know, there's congestion in the urban areas. We have to get people back to the provinces. We have to move development to the countryside. And I'm no longer, it's been a decade or so since I was in the grade school. And up to now, that's still something that has to be handled. The BPO sector, however, has been inducing so many jobs, both direct and induced in jobs, in areas where the only basic necessity is a cluster of schools that can produce people that they are able to train. So each job that the BPO industry provides gives a multiplier of about 2.5 to 5 jobs. So suddenly there is really real access to job opportunities, not in the National Capital Region and other highly urbanized areas. Agriculture has been moving from success to success. There is that conscious focus to ensure that the incomes of farmers are increased. Part of the process is removing the middleman from the transaction so that both the consumer benefits from lower prices and the farmer actually maximizes his incomes. Now, in basically everything that we try to do as an economist, we try to maximize the utility of the resources that we have on hand. And anytime there's a waste, there's hell to pay when I find out about it. And so far, I have not had to call too many people's attention to it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You have lots of Filipino Americans here, and if there was one thing you want them to do for your government, what would that be?
Well, the key really is empowerment of our people. And empowerment has to come from education. You have gone abroad, you have gone through different systems, you have work experience that perhaps is not available, relevant, or well, not available or not readily doable right now in the country. The imparting or the exporting of these skills in whatever field redounds to increased capabilities for countrymen to be able to compete better in an increasingly competitive global environment. So it's really moving their skill levels up and up and up. That redounds to more and more and more opportunities for everybody. And hopefully it will come to a point that there really is not that much need to leave the country because opportunities are present for all.
So that's your message. Thank you. And I must end by saying that, and asking you, since we did have the honor of hosting both of your parents here, that what is one thing that you feel you always think about in your presidency that you have gotten from your parents?
Of course, we're navigating sometimes uncharted waters. The first probably 2 or 3 months was a compilation of the problems bequeathed to me by my predecessor. It got to the point that you become jaded of hearing the next thing that was unearthed. Now, what helps me through the difficult times is I go back to what both my parents had to undergo, how they survived the challenges and how they overcame the challenges presented before them. And I also end up by saying the challenges before me pale in comparison to what they had to undergo and what they overcome, or what they were able to overcome rather. And I will not die, I will not stop rather trying to emulate what they have done, lest I incur their wrath and to have visits from both of them to remind me of the training, the genes that they have bestowed upon me, and the experiences that they have enabled me to experience.
Please join me in thanking President Aquino. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.